After years of searching for my dream horse, I finally found him. Meet Sapphire, a very rare buckskin warmblood stallion with 4 perfect white socks, incredible bloodlines, and a Swedish personality. This is a dream come true that, however, almost ended early, as within a week of bringing him home, he was found in his pasture, unable to balance and barely walk. Did I mention that he is located on the other side of the world? Let me start from the beginning. In the past, I've always bought cheap, green, or problem horses that are either off the track or very young and untrained with no special breeding. But I've always dreamed of owning a nicely bred warmblood. Earlier this year, I sold a horse that I've had for 3 years that was not suited for what I wanted to do, which is higher level jumping. I then made a decision that this is the year I'm gonna splurge and buy my dream horse. I wanted to be young, maybe around 3 or so, as I wanted to do the breaking in myself to learn and build a stronger bond from start. I sold my horse in March and thought I will start looking in August this year, so I can just focus on my other horse Romeo for now and just take a little break from horses. However, mid-April, my aunt sent me this Facebook post with this most gorgeous little colt I've ever seen. He had incredible dressage bloodlines and a bit of jumping in there too. He was already showing perfect conformation at only 10 months old and had 4 little white socks with a buckskin coat and white frosting in mane and tail. The only problem was that he was located in south of Sweden and I live in California. After doing some quick research into importing him into the US, I was thrilled to see that he was still within my budget. From my understanding, it costs around $10,000 to import a gelding into the US from Europe, and it costs more if it's a stallion or a mare. And if I'm going to keep him a stallion, I just want to import him before he's 2 years old to avoid the extra cost related to importing a stallion. I posted his photo in a horse collar genetics group on Facebook, and the pros told me that he's a buckskin and the frosting in his mane will probably disappear just because his dam is bay and his sire is a palomino. This is my guess what he will look like in terms of color. Here's also photos of his sire, dam, grandsire, and for your reference of what his conformation would probably look like. I've owned 3 different stallions before, so I'm experienced with training them. However, I don't have my own horse property, so I need to find a barn near me that would allow a stallion. 3 weeks after I bought him, I flew to Sweden to pick him up. And I'm gonna pick up Sapphire tomorrow. And I just spread out some shavings for him. And then they're actually facing backwards, which is pretty cool. I brought 2 friends along for the road trip, and it took us 5 hours to drive from Eskilstuna to Växjö, where the breeder was located. I rented a horse truck and removed the center divider to make it a big box stall for him, as he's not used to being tied up. So we parked the truck as close to the barn as possible and gave him some calming paste 30 minutes before. I then loaded him, jumped over the wall, while the previous owner and my 2 friends closed the door. He was super nervous and screaming after the mare, obviously, but he was such a good boy and walked on almost immediately. I was focusing on keeping his head down so he wouldn't rear and hit his head. Me and my friends took turns to stand with him in the back for the first hour as we felt so sorry for him. So we just picked up Sapphire. He's in the trailer. I'm going to show you. And he's being a really good boy. He walked on straight onto the trailer. He was a little bit stressed because we took him from his mom, obviously. But he's doing really good, and we have another 2 hours to drive. He stayed calm the whole way, a total of 6 hours, and once we arrived to the new barn, all the horses in the barn were nervous. The yearling next to him started chewing when he saw him. Sapphire did not chew, which was a bit worrying, as chewing is a sign of being submissive and not top of the herd, and he did not show any signs. He was just showing stud-like behavior, even though he's only 10 months, so I was a little bit worried he was gonna be a more challenging horse. I want him to live as natural life as possible and learn manners from other horses early. So initially, I was going to keep him with another 1-year-old stallion or in a herd of yearlings. However, after doing research and thinking about it, I decided to put him in a herd with older horses too. I know this increases the risk of injury, but I want him to live the most natural life possible, which mimics the way they live in the wild. One day, I received a call from the barn manager who said that Sapphire was struggling to walk and balance. I called the vet straight away, who came out and did a test for anaplasmosis, which is a tick-borne disease that shows similar symptoms, including lack of coordination and fever. The test, however, came back negative, so the conclusion from the vet was that the symptoms were likely a reaction from the Equimax wormer that I gave him the day before. And he recovered after just 2 days, so he's all fine now and everything is fine, but I was just very scared, and it was just scared not knowing what happened, but it's 99% from the worming paste, and now I just know that he's sensitive to it. Before turning him out in the new herd, I let him graze in a separate pasture for 3 days for them to get to know each other over the fence first to reduce the risk of injury. When I was there one day, one of the older horses in the other herd kept on trying to attack him, and he did chew then, which is a sign of showing he was being submissive, which made me very happy. So now he's with 2 older geldings, 1 5-year-old gelding and another 1-year-old stallion he can play with. I also volunteered as a helper at a young horse showing at Tärnö Säteri when I was in Sweden to learn about what judges look for in a young horse and decide if I should show Sapphire or not. Tärnö Säteri is one of the most beautiful equestrian facilities I've ever been to, with multiple indoor and outdoor arenas. And I asked the judge a lot of questions in terms of what they look for in conformation, jumping ability and gaits for the younger horses. Something that surprised me for the showing was that when a horse stands still in front of the judges, they don't want them to stand perfectly square necessarily, just balanced on all fours, which I found interesting. In reality, showing a horse in hand in Sweden does really make a difference in terms of how valuable the horse is. It's more of a hobby, same as showing in show jumping or dressage, and Sapphire will never be for sale, but I think it's fun to hear the experts' opinions on such a nicely bred horse. They said I could show him at breeders as a 1-year-old in October this year, which is something I'm considering. He would be shown as a dressage prospect with his bloodlines. The plan is to import him to the US in May or June next year before he turns 2 in July 2025, as they have to quarantine much longer if you import a stallion after they're 2. Look at his trot in this video. I need to pinch myself every day to understand that this is my horse. I was very nervous and anxious the first month of owning him, as it feels too good to be true, but I've accepted the worst case scenario that anything can happen to horses and he can be injured tomorrow. He's fully insured and I will do my best to set him up for success. I got very lucky as the seller had many interested buyers, but I acted fast and committed to buying him before anyone else. And the breeder liked that I was Swedish and would bring him to the US. This world is new to me, importing horses into the US and showing, and I will obviously document everything here. Also, what should his barn name be? The Swedish breeder called him Sappe, which doesn't really work in English. Even though he has mainly dressage bloodlines, I want to compete in higher level jumping with him and low level eventing. Maybe I'll find a new passion for dressage if I can find a great dressage trainer in San Diego that can help me. First step is to find a great barn that he can be in a large, safe turnout once he arrives in San Diego, May 2025. He's currently near my hometown in Eskilstuna, Sweden, so it's easy for me to visit when I visit my family. And make sure you subscribe to follow his journey.